I need to speak directly, because this is where many people get pulled into deception without realizing it. There was a time in my life when I understood exactly how ordinary objects could be turned into symbols of false hope. And one of the easiest ways people were drawn in was not through something dramatic. It was through something simple, something common, something they already had in their home. Salt was one of those things. That may surprise some people because salt looks harmless. It is normal. It sits in the kitchen. It is used in food. It does not look mystical. It does not look dangerous. And that is exactly why it becomes such an easy object for people to attach spiritual expectations to. Once a person starts believing that where they place salt can unlock favor, attract money, shift energy, or secure blessings, they have already crossed a line they may not even recognize. They have moved from trust in God's provision into trust in a formula. And formulas are dangerous when they replace faith, obedience, wisdom, and honest stewardship. When I was in that world, I saw how often people wanted results without surrender. They wanted increase without character. They wanted protection without prayer. They wanted open doors without obedience. And objects became the shortcut. Small rituals were always attractive because they felt manageable. They made people feel in control. Put this here, move that there, repeat this phrase, perform this step, and then wait for life to change. But what many people never understood was that false spiritual dependence often hides inside things that look harmless. This is why I need to warn you. If you have been taught that salt in a corner, salt at a doorway, or salt in a room will somehow produce financial blessings, you need to stop and examine what you are really trusting. Because financial breakthrough does not come from superstition. It does not come from symbolic placement. And it certainly does not come from giving household objects the authority that belongs to God alone. The reason these practices spread so easily is because they appeal to something very deep in human nature. People want certainty. They want control. They want to feel like they can do one small act and finally turn their life around. And when someone is under financial pressure, they become especially vulnerable to anything that promises quick results. That is what makes these ideas so persuasive. I remember how this worked. The object itself was never the main point. The point was the belief attached to it. Once people accepted that an object could carry spiritual influence on its own, they became easier to guide toward deeper dependence on methods instead of truth. And the more desperate they became, the more attached they grew to those methods. That is how deception often enters, not as something obviously dark, as something practical, simple, and almost comforting. It offers a sense of action. It gives people the feeling that they are finally doing something. But activity is not the same as alignment. Repetition is not the same as wisdom, and ritual is not the same as faith. Some of you have been under real pressure financially. Bills have been heavy. Delays have been discouraging. Doors have not opened the way you expected. So when someone tells you that one small symbolic act can shift everything, part of you wants to believe it. But pressure does not make false ideas true. Desperation does not turn superstition into spiritual reality. You need discernment here, because not everything that feels hopeful is healthy. Some methods soothe anxiety while quietly shifting your trust in the wrong direction. And once trust shifts, the heart begins to depend on signs, objects, and rituals instead of seeking God for wisdom, provision, discipline, and peace. Let me say something clearly. Financial stability is not built on symbolism. It is built through truth, wisdom, discipline, integrity, generosity, and patient decision making. That may sound less dramatic than a ritual, but it is real. And reality matters more than fantasy when your life is on the line. When people were trapped in those systems, they often ignored the practical while chasing the mystical. They would place their hope in objects while continuing habits that quietly destroyed their future. Poor spending, hidden debt, chaotic priorities, dishonesty, envy, comparison, impulsiveness, no stewardship, no self-control, and then they wondered why nothing truly changed. A house does not become financially secure because salt sits in a corner. A life does not become blessed because an object was positioned in a certain way. What changes a financial story over time is wisdom applied consistently. It is earning honestly, spending carefully, planning realistically, avoiding scams, resisting desperation, and staying anchored when pressure rises. And yes, people of faith may also pray for provision and guidance. They may ask God for wisdom, peace, and help. But prayer is not the same as magical thinking. Prayer does not turn objects into guarantees. It turns the heart toward dependence, humility, and better judgment. That distinction matters. Because the danger of salt rituals is not just that they fail. The danger is that they teach people to expect breakthrough from the wrong source. And when that expectation becomes deep enough, a person can start overlooking the very changes that would actually help them. Whenever people start depending on signs, they become vulnerable to manipulation. That is one of the oldest patterns there is. If someone believes a hidden method controls outcomes, they become easier to influence, easier to exploit, and easier to keep in cycles of fear and dependence. I watched people spend energy maintaining rituals while neglecting the responsibilities that were right in front of them. They would repeat symbolic acts but avoid hard conversations. They would cling to formulas but refuse accountability. They would keep hoping for a shortcut while ignoring the need for change. And that is where the real damage happens. Not just in the practice itself, but in what it distracts you from. Some of you do not need another sign. You need a sober reset. You need to look honestly at what is helping your life and what is draining it. You need to stop handing power to objects and start confronting patterns. You need less superstition and more clarity, less ritual and more responsibility, because every false shortcut carries a hidden cost. It wastes time. It delays maturity. It keeps you waiting on a method that cannot carry the weight you have placed on it. And while you are waiting, the real work goes undone. That is why I am urging you not to romanticize these practices. A thing does not become trustworthy simply because it is common. Ordinary objects can still become part of extraordinary confusion when people assign them powers they do not have. So, what should you do instead? First, reject the belief that financial blessing can be activated by placing a substance in a location. That idea may feel spiritual, but it trains your mind in the wrong direction. It teaches dependence on technique rather than discernment. Second, return to what is real. Look at your finances honestly. Track what is coming in and what is going out. Cut what is unnecessary. Be careful with debt. Resist impulse decisions made in fear. Seek wise counsel from trustworthy, grounded people. If you are under pressure, focus on stabilizing choices, not symbolic gestures. Third, if you are a person of faith, pray without superstition. Ask for wisdom. Ask for patience. Ask for strength to make good decisions. Ask for peace while you walk through uncertainty. Ask for help seeing clearly. There is a big difference between prayerful dependence and ritualized control. And finally, be patient with steady growth. Desperation loves shortcuts, but stability is usually built in quieter ways. Through consistency, through learning, through discipline, through refusing to be ruled by panic. That may not sound exciting, but it is honest. And honesty is far more valuable than a promise that sounds powerful, but leaves you disappointed. Let me leave you with this warning. The moment you start believing that an object can guarantee favor, wealth, or breakthrough, you have already given that object more power than it deserves. And once that happens, your judgment starts bending around the belief. Do not do that. Do not give small things big power. Salt belongs in food. It does not belong on a throne in your mind. It should not be carrying your hopes, your fears, or your expectations about money. Financial blessing is not hidden in a placement trick. It will not be unlocked by superstition, and it should not be reduced to a household ritual. If you have been chasing methods like this, let this be the moment you stop, not in fear, in clarity. Step away from formulas that promise control. Step away from symbolic guarantees. Step away from anything that teaches you to trust a method more than wisdom. Because the truth is this: what changes lives is not where you place salt. It is where you place your trust, how you live, and whether you are willing to choose truth over illusion when pressure makes illusion look attractive.